that studio this time last year and him asking me who was the all-time winningest quarterback on Wild Card Weekend, and I think the answer to that question was Joe Flacco, so I'm going to guess the answer to this question is John Harbaugh.
Okay, you did it. You fell directly into his trap. That's how he wanted to set you up. John Harbaugh is second. He is one away. Pete Carroll is the correct answer. Pete Carroll has 6 wins on Wild Card Weekend. He said this, he's verbatim in the break. He said to me, I set this up last year. I think I've got Graziano on this one. Okay, score one for
playing the long game. I like it.
That is very well done. All right, Graziano, meanwhile, let's go to your Mythbusters. Instead of overreactions this week, you're focusing on playoff teams and busting some myths about them. Let's start with this. Drew Brees can't beat defenses with his arm anymore. Bust that myth.
Yeah, I think that's rooted in the idea that, maybe he doesn't throw deep, and he hasn't been able to throw deep really consistently for years, but Drew Brees in the range of 15 to 20 yards down the field is completing passes at a 70% rate, tied for second in the league. He can beat you with his arm, even though it's not going to necessarily look like he's chucking it a mile down the field. That's why that's a myth.
All right, the next myth. The Ravens are the most dangerous team in the AFC playoff field. Bust it.
Yeah, they could be, but there really isn't evidence to support it because the last 2 years, they've been one of the easiest teams in the playoff field to beat. Lamar Jackson's QBR in the playoffs in his 2 seasons is right around 21, a very low figure. In their current 5-game winning streak, they've only beaten one playoff team. That was the Browns. We still need to see them be able to come back. We need to see Lamar be able to make those throws in the playoffs. I believe he can, but we don't have the evidence historically to support it yet.
And then one more. The Steelers' running game will come back in the playoffs. Will you bust that myth?
Yeah, look, this is not an issue of them needing to run it more or get the backs healthy. Their offensive line has been a poor one this year at run blocking and pass blocking in the bottom 3 or 4 of the league in terms of those categories. That's not something that gets fixed overnight. Look, Ben Roethlisberger only been sacked 13 times, but he gets rid of the ball as quickly as anybody in the league. That offensive line has been an issue and a liability for Pittsburgh, and going into the postseason, it's going to continue to be one, and that's why I don't think their running game comes back anytime soon.
That feels critical as they get set to play Cleveland, as we showed you on Sunday night. I have to start with the offensive lineman again here. Jeff, can you flip a switch? Can the Steelers turn some knob somewhere and suddenly be able to run the football this weekend?
No, they cannot. And as much as I hate to agree with Graz, I mean, the bottom line is, in the last 5 weeks, this is the 32nd ranked rushing offense, which is absolutely absurd that you're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers that way. But no, you can't just flip a switch and turn it on. This offensive line has been poor in blocking and creating holes, whether it be for Snell, Connor, you name it. So no, they won't just be able to turn this thing on. And the fear for them is facing this Cleveland front four is, can they protect it for the deep ball? This team's played one good quarter of football really in 6 weeks against the Colts, hit a bunch of passes down the field. They better hope their offensive line comes to play, or they may be bumped really early.
Well, so then, Marcus, that brings me directly to you. If they do not or cannot run the football, can they win Sunday?
Yeah, they can win, G, because Cleveland's pass defense is horrid, quite frankly, but it's much more difficult. Look, and two, remember, Olivier Vernon won't be in this game, who's been their high-pressure guy when drop back has happened. The one team that I thought dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers from the standpoint of limiting what they do offensively was the Washington football team. And that rush and those guys getting their hands up and batting balls. The worst problem and the worst situation for the Steelers is getting behind on downs. First down is critical for this football team. So to Jeff's point, no run game. Usually you in third and long situations. That's not where you want to be. But they get a little break this week because the Browns back end is struggling and suffering from a lot of injuries, and they just not playing well back there. Shoot, we saw Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
Mason Rudolph-led team only lose by 2 against the Browns, who had to have the game to get in the playoffs. So I'm imagining Big Ben can do a little bit more than Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, Rudolph threw for 300 yards against them this past Sunday in a game they didn't need to win. Okay, next order of business is back to Philly. And this time we're talking directly about the quarterback. Carson Wentz still plans to ask for a trade in the offseason because his relationship with Coach Doug Peterson is fractured beyond repair. That is the reporting from our Chris Mortensen. But the general manager, Howie Roseman, said yesterday a trade is not being discussed.
That is not anything that we're talking about right now. We're talking about a guy that's immensely talented, has a great work ethic, and doing whatever we can to put him in the best possible situation to be successful. When you have players like that, they're like fingers on your hands. You can't even imagine that they're not part of you, that they're not here. And, that's how we feel about Carson.
Okay, so we will bring everyone, including Mel, into this conversation. But Graziano, I will start with you because you don't expect him to get up there yesterday and say, oh, yeah, we're absolutely open for business here, and we would consider trading him if the right offer came our way. So what are you hearing from people you talk to around the league?
Yeah, hearing that the Eagles' preference, honestly, would be to bring Carson Wentz back and see if they can get this thing right. They're heavily invested in him. Remember, they traded up twice in the draft to go get him. They had to get from 13 to 8 to 2 to get him. And then a couple years later, they're giving him a monster contract, a franchise quarterback contract that has them pretty well locked in to the point where if they did trade him, they would take a major dead money hit. So their preference would be to keep him. Obviously, the issue is if he wants out, and I'm inclined to believe Chris Mortensen's reporting, more than I believe what a general manager says. No offense to Howie, but I think if he wants out, he can make things difficult for them to get to the point where they have no choice. But you're right; they're not going to come out and say it. You don't want other teams to think you're desperate. You're not going to get anything in return if you do end up deciding you have to move him.
It's critical to point out that this is the general manager who traded up twice to take him and gave him that contract. So there's a lot of things going on here. And Mel, I'm trying to read the very stern expression on your face. What is your takeaway from this conversation?
Well, I think the frame of mind that you send your team into the offseason with is critical. And I defended Doug Peterson, but I was sitting there the other night thinking, what are you doing? And I think the Jalen Hurts situation just is unbelievable that you didn't allow him to go out and try to win that football game. Quarterbacks can struggle. How do they deal with adversity? How do they deal with a game where you should have been at 17-17? Why in the world at the end of the third quarter aren't you kicking a field goal on a 4th and goal from the 5? Tie the game up, points are at a premium. Your quarterback, Alex Smith, on the other side, you think about him, you're getting after him, he can't move. You know it's a field goal game. That blew me away. But not have Hurts or Wentz available at the end. Who would ever have thought Nate Sudfeld was going to take the last snap moving into the offseason? That made no sense. But I think when you said it a month ago when you had me on, Greeny, I said, this is Wentz's team. And I believe right now this is still Wentz's team. What else are you going to do? You're going to go move forward with Jalen Hurts when you didn't even leave him in the game in the final game? No. He's a creative accent piece to Carson Wentz. The money's not an issue. Hurts was a second-round pick. Wentz is paid big. If you want to say it's a competition, fine. I don't think it's a competition. This is Carson Wentz's team. Surround him with the right people. Keep him healthy, and he will win. And Jalen Hurts will be there to maybe give defensive coordinators a lot to think about. But I'm all about Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think you can trade him.
What do you think, Marcus?
I just listened to Mel and I got so frustrated I lost my train of thought. First of all, it ain't Carson Wentz's team, right? Because Carson Wentz, for all intents and purposes, don't want to be there anymore. So it damn sure ain't his team. The Eagles are in a situation where the money is going to make this way more complicated than it should be. Carson Wentz has not come out, said anything, refuted any of the reports about him not wanting to be a part of the Philadelphia Eagles. And G, you know me, I said this with Aaron. With Dak Prescott, when you have a general, lost my mic.
This is television in 2020 and now into 2021. Go ahead, Marcus, keep going, we can hear you.
I lost my mic. Anyway, what I was saying was when we were talking about the Dak Prescott negotiations in Dallas, general managers, ownership don't play coy on a quarterback. I'm going to stand firm by that as long as I cover this league. And the fact that Howie Roseman didn't say Carson Wentz is our future, he's going to be our quarterback, we're going to work this out and make sure Carson has everything he needs to have success in Philly, tells me everything I need to know about this situation. So I disagree with Mel. This ain't Carson Wentz's team no more because I didn't hear anybody in the decision-making process say Carson Wentz will be our guy.
Let me get Jeff in on this. Jeff, what do you...
Whose team is it? Yeah.
Go ahead, Mel. Go ahead.
No, I say whose team is. If it's Jalen Hurts' team, you keep him in the daggone game and let him right the ship and win the game and have momentum going into the offseason. So if you believe it's Hurts is the guy, why do you pull him for Nate Sudfeld? That made no sense. So I'm with you on that. But you don't let a quarterback dictate who the team is. It's the organization says, Carson, you fix that. It isn't hard to fix a relationship. I mean, come on. It takes 10. I would give me 5 minutes with Carson Wentz, and he's our guy. You don't need 6 months. I mean, come on. Really? It's a relationship building business, as all things are. Carson Wentz is the right quarterback. Jalen Hurts is all of a sudden franchise. Carson Wentz proved he was franchise. Jalen Hurts hasn't proven that.
I'm not going to lie to you. I have a fever, and the only prescription is more Mel, as far as I'm concerned. Jeff, go.
Yeah, okay,
listen,
go,
Mel, listen. I think Wentz is a quarterback. He's just not a quarterback of the Eagles. Like what you're saying, I think he needs to go somewhere else. This is the second time he's been supplanted by his backup. They have a statue of his backup outside the stadium. Never mind that he played that year to get him in, right? Then they put up Nick Foles' statue outside the stadium. And then this year they end up going and putting Jalen Hurts in. And again, everybody goes, oh, man, he's the spark we needed. He's all these things. From Carson Wentz perspective, I think he's a starting quarterback. I think he goes somewhere else and has a great career, resurrects his career, all of those things. But he doesn't want to be there because he doesn't think they believe in him. That's the issue, right?
Okay.
What Howie Roseman, to Marcus Spears' point, Roseman could have cleared it all up, man. Hey, he is our guy. Jalen Hurts had a heck of a run. We really appreciate the effort, all those things. But ultimately, Carson Wentz, it's his job to lose. I run this team. Look, well-run organizations have one voice. We got a whole lot of voices.